Welcome to Season 2 of Producer Points. My name is Justin Gammella, and I'll be your host. I'm a producer and songwriter who's had the honor of working with some of the best in the industry. This season, we're diving even deeper into one-on-one conversations with producers, mixers, songwriters, and artists, exploring their unique journeys, creative process, and insights that shape great music. Join me for real talks, straight from the studio, where music and life intersect. This is Producer Points. Welcome to another Roundtable episode of Producer Points. Today, we're going to be talking about the role of analog gear in a digital age. In 2025, music is made almost entirely in the box, and the tools available to producers and mixers have never been more powerful or more accessible. But even as plugins get more advanced, analog gear still holds a unique place in the hearts and racks of producers and mixers across genres. For some, it's about sound. For others, it's about feel, workflow, or just the ritual of it all. So, what is the role of analog gear in a digital age? Is it still worth investing in? And how do you strike the right balance between warmth and workflow? Today's roundtable dives deep into how analog gear fits into the modern studio and why, for some of us, it'll never go away. Joining me today are three producers and mixers and engineers who each bring a different perspective to the table. First, we have a mixer, producer, and engineer with credits including Death Cab for Cutie, Pearl Jam, and Biffy Clyro. He brings a deep love for real instruments, thoughtful production, and a hybrid approach shaped by years at Henson. Martin Cook, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we have an LA-based recording and mix engineer with roots in punk and classical composition. From studios in New York to sessions at Capitol Records, he built a career on capturing raw, honest performances and creating spaces where artists can be their most vulnerable. John Graber. Dude, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And lastly, a Los Angeles-based mixer and producer with credits including Alexander 23, Jeremy Zucker, and David Kushner. Known for his clean, modern sound and collaborative spirit, he brings a thoughtful approach to every project. Not only that, but I was just at his house on Sunday for Greek Easter, and he and his family made some of the best lamb I've ever had in my life. Yanni AP.
Let's go.
Thank you for being here. Dude, listen, that was a great event, party, dinner, whatever you want to call it.
Dude, I'm so glad that you guys came. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know for our listeners and our two guests here, Yanni made like a whole lamb roasted over charcoal for Greek Easter. So it was a really good time and honestly fucking delicious. It was really, really, really good.
That's how you get the true analog warmth over hot coals right there.
That's the turn we wanted. Thank you, Yanni.
This podcast is about barbecue, right? We're talking about barbecue?
Barbecue. I mean, listen, Every conversation I have is about food. Don't trust me about anything on music, but food, take my word on it. And this man over here makes a good lamb. So,
Nice.
And that's that. Anyway, we're going to start this conversation off with a really simple question. Where do you stand on analog? Martin, why don't we start with you? Where do you stand on using analog gear in your workflow?
For me, it's a big part of, as I look over at my racks, it's a big part of mixing, which I do mostly in this room. I came up on consoles in big studios, and there's something about analog summing that, I don't know, I'm just kind of used to it. And I'm not saying it's better. It's definitely not better or worse than mixing in the box, because they're both quite valid. But when I kind of switched to working in a hybrid setup, I tried to do in the box stuff, and I felt like I had good results. But anytime that I would like A/B it with a hybrid setup, it would instantly not be better, but just be different. And I felt like I worked quicker. So for me, it's I'm summing. I've got some insert stuff that I'm using, compression EQ, and definitely some trick boxes, certain distortion boxes and things that are I feel that you can't really replicate with plugins when it comes to high level compression and high level distortion. There's just some attack, and really all the timing stuff is pretty unique. I have a real level lock, and when they came out with the level lock plugin, it sounds awesome, but I was trying to get the plugin to do what my box can do. And it just it doesn't have the same groove and feel, especially with percussive instruments. And not that the plugin's not good, because it's very cool. But there's just something, I think, tactile about it. And I think for me, it's the way that it sounds and the way that I work with it and work into it it's just familiar to me. And I found a pretty good setup this way. And I've been working like this, I don't know, almost 10 years now with this flow and pretty much the same setup. And just, I don't know, it's just familiar and it works. And every time I try to go the other way, it's a struggle, I guess. So maybe it's just more familiarity than anything. Yeah.
Familiarity, it's even, you can even argue it's taste too, right? Like you have the taste for like wanting that tone and warmth and saturation that analog gear gives you.
Yeah, I mean, but I will argue there is a technical thing that's happening. There is randomness, there is chaos, because it's not just the digital versions of everything. And like I do this thing it's called stem mixing sometimes for people where they're like, I have my mix and it sounds good, but it's not quite crossing the finish line. And I'll have them just send me like 10 to 15 stems, and I'll literally just kind of run it through my setup, cue a little bit of dynamic stuff, not any creative big move stuff, very small things. And I'll send it back to them and be like, what did you do? Like, why does this sound bigger and deeper and like extended? And it's like, I think it's just I've got 3 sets of transformers that my mix goes through before it comes back to the computer. So there's a lot of color, and it's just chaos. It's randomness. It doesn't happen the same every time.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a little bit more questions about that later, but I want to go to Yanni. What's your take on analog gear?
A classic question. For me, I mix fully in the box. I think it's a preference thing, It's not a necessity thing. I think the quality of digital plugins today, it's incredible. And like the benefits that you get from plugins, the recall, speed, consistency, all that good stuff outweighs the analog mojo, whatever that is. I'm not anti-analog by any means. I just think the conversation has shifted. It's less about you need to have this $10,000 compressor, or you need to have like a Neve whatever to get a great mix. It's more about personal preference, or that person's creative ritual. Some people like to turn physical knobs. There's something nice about that. I get that. But for me, I'm a digital guy.
This is why I was glad you came on here, Yanni, because I know like Yanni is someone who mixes a lot of my records, and I know he's like pretty much fully in the box, and like I have a lot of gear, and like I love analog gear, and I was super stoked to have your like take on this.
Great, man. I will add one thing actually, which I'm glad you just mentioned, because whenever I mix something that you've recorded, I know that it's got some tube transformer sauce baked in. I'm speaking from a mixer perspective. And even within that, a very specific mixer perspective that does mostly like pop, indie pop type music. If I was a recording engineer, I would love like all the analog gear I could get my hands on. I would love to record through tube compressors, nice preamps, all of that sauce. That stuff is great. But for what I do, which is like a very specific thing, I haven't been able to work it into my workflow.
Yeah. John, where do you stand on this? Because you kind of do also a lot of production and recording engineering and mixing, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I right now, I'm mostly just mixing, but the idiom in which I work the most is probably, and like the stuff I'm kind of known for the most is punk rock music, which the mix approach in general is significantly different than something that like Yanni or even stuff that like Martin would work on. Mainly because like the things... production when it comes to pop or things that are a bit more polished or anything like that, is really dictating the mix a lot more. While in punk rock and in pop punk and hardcore, it's still really raw when it gets to the mix stage. Like the production stage in that kind of music is generally done more in pre-production than in the recording aspect. So like the production stuff really relies on the songwriting and structure. They're not really doing too many like plug-in tricks and programming things. I mean, that's pop punk does, but like punk and hardcore less so. So when it hits my desk, things are still pretty raw. And also I do a lot of like DIY punk. Still pretty tied to that scene. And for me, I love that kind of music, but I also like love the way good records sound. So how do I take something that's like raw and very visceral and try to push it through something that's going to make it a bit more sonically more commercially understandable and something that I like. But even when I'm mixing pop music that has been produced and I'm trying to match the rough or beat the rough, I generally am using a pretty heavy hand, at least on my center section of analog stuff. I find especially like reverbs, I much prefer analog reverbs, whether it's like the H3000 or the H9000, or like I have a spring that's got the moisturizer. or like a plate reverb or any of the AMS stuff, anything that's like a weird non-lin. I generally prefer those over plugins just because they have their own A to D on them, and I can kind of hear the difference in sample rate switching. So like the decay of like Valhalla Verb in 48 versus 96 is significantly different. And if I just use an outboard unit that's just feeding that in, it's doing its own clocking and gives me a more truer decay.
No, that's cool. I never even like, it's funny. I just recently started working in 48 like a year ago. And like I hear those differences, and I haven't made the jump to like anything above that yet, just because I haven't found it, at least in like pop music, super
I don't know,
necessary.
I don't know, like mixing pop vocals in 96K. I think like, I mean, I don't know if Yanni has any like to say about that, but I'm sure Martin does. Like, I think vocals in 96K make a difference. And
would you say like, because I found sometimes melodyning and like all that stuff like just sounds better when you do bring the rate up. Is that what you're kind of talking about there?
I'm just talking about in general, like you have
in general.
I mean, you're going to have more fidelity within your top end in 96K than you're going to have at 48 or 44. Right. But as far as like the role of analog gear in my workflow and why I use analog gear, I like things that are tactile. And like even the plugins that I reach for the most are ones that feel very tactile. But, you know, here, like much like Martin, like I came up on large format consoles and big studios in New York. And then when I moved to LA, I was working a lot at Capitol. You know, it's a big old board. If you want more, you know, 3K on your bass drum, you just reach up and turn the knob and it's there.
It's there.
I feel significantly more connected to the music that way. But this is also, it's entirely like a me thing. I think a like where it gets, where the conversation gets like boring and stupid is like what it's all about intent, right? Like, does it make sense to, or is the intention of the song to be this kind of very tactile mix where it does feel like it is engineered, or is the intent of the song to come off as like this effortless vocal performance? Those are different records, you know, like it's, you know, you listen to like Martin made a record called Kintsugi. I mean, that record is like an engineer's dream. You can hear where Martin and Costi and Chris had touched things and moved.
My favorite Death Cab record, by the way, Justin, it's also because of the engineering, Martin, by the way. I fucking love that.
Kintsugi has the best sounding drums of any Death Cab record ever made. I'll say it to Chris's face. You heard me, Chris.
Yep.
Fuck you, Ben.
No comment from Martin.
But like that record has a very different intention to the end user, to the listener, and to the audience than, you know, Short and Sweet, which doesn't sound particularly engineered.
Right.
It sounds way more like they made a record, and what happened was this is the record, the end, and that's for better or for worse. Right. It sounds like I'm shitting on that record. I'm not. But
no, it's a different kind of thing. They're using samples or using like other things to like make a thing versus, you know, when I work with an artist, I do a lot of singer-songwriter stuff. It's like, okay, I'm like being very strategic about like, okay, we're gonna have this kind of drum sound for the album and like kind of tweak it from there. And this is, you know, it's a different kind of vibe,
sure.
You know, and there's and that's what I think like we're all trying to say, that like there's no right or wrong way to like do anything. It's all taste, it's all in workflow. Even the end result is taste. What one person thinks sounds amazing, another person is going to think sounds like shit. You know, even my take on analog gear as a producer and songwriter is, my goal is I like my analog gear going on the way in. I don't say never, but I very rarely am running stuff back through my analog gear, because I'm always just like, cool, I'm just going to record in with it, and like that's where I'm going to get that, you know, warmth and saturation from. And even recently I've begun starting to like buy more behind me like analog synths, and that to me is like the comparison with like you guys mixing on like boards, where it's like, yeah, soft synths sound amazing, you know, they're very, very useful, but there's just something about, I think so much differently when I'm touching a real synth and I'm turning a knob, and I can just like literally hit record on a record here and just start playing and going through patches and just like record for an hour and get all great stuff just because I'm like doing things. And I can't, well, one, you physically can't do that on a soft synth. I guess you could if you make like an insert or something.
But it's the concept of intention. I mean, like you're intentionally trying to play in time. You're intentionally trying to make sure it has feel. You're intentionally switching a source. with a soft synth, so I mean, I have every fucking soft synth ever on my
Right, same.
computer. And when I'm just doing writing sessions, like I have like a folder of MIDI chords that I could just drag and drop in, so I'm not even playing. And like that, there's no intention behind how those chords are played or voiced. It's just that's the voicing I want. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, it works, it
Right.
works, it moves on. You know, that's like the utilitarian versus the artistic expression. It's like, and that's kind of where mixing and producing, those are really the big collisions of thought process within what we all do, is like we balance between this technical understanding that is driven by understanding and knowledge, but also we have this intuitive thing where it's like, oh, does it feel right? Like I reaching for one compressor over another. Like I know the way like an SSL G compresses, and like specifically the one that's behind me, and I know the way that like my Unfairchild compresses, like, and those are
Right.
two very different flavors, and I'm like, oh, I need that flavor. I can reach for it and dial it and know how far to like touch it to be like, oh, that's giving me what I want. And then I could back away from it and then go back to doing my things in the box.
Yeah. Yanni, just because like, you're more in the box side, like I mean, I know these answers, but the listeners don't. Do you like have like certain emulations that, kind of like John is saying, like, oh, I know this does this or this does this. Like, are there things you reach for in that realm in the box?
Yeah, for sure. Like there's so many plugins that have quirks that I've learned, and I'll use like a specific plugin because it has a specific weird thing. Like the Isotope Vintage EQ, also like all the different Pultec EQs, I think, which it's based off of, kind of do this thing where it does like a crazy top end boost if you boost and cut, and same with the low end, you boost and cut at the low end, it does like a boost and a dip. That's like a weird quirk that I feel like came from an analog thing, and they brought it into the digital domain, and I definitely rely on that sauce a bit. And other compressors like 1176 style compressors, can use those to get a little bit of like a analog warmth, because they do kind of
Yeah.
like add some harmonic distortion, they add a little bit of color, they might like tame or boost some top end. It's not just like
for our listeners here, just because I'm sure we can make a good clip out of this. What's like your favorite 1176 emulation that you kind of like to your go to for vocals?
my go-to is the UAD one, either the black face one or the silver face one. Oh.
Yeah. What about John and Martin? Do you guys have any analog 1176s that you guys have that you like to use?
Real ones? I have a real
Yeah.
one. It's not a vintage one. It's a reissue, but I'll use mine. I use mine for tracking when I will for mixing. When it comes to mixing, I'm pretty much just using the summing stuff, and then I have a Pultec and a fancy tube compressor that I'll have on a vocal chain. Just because, like, I feel like the plugin 1176 sounds pretty great, and when I turn the knobs and the plugin doesn't go like mine does. But I'll use it for tracking more. But yeah, I mean, a blackface is always going to sound great, and like Yanni said, it's like. Yeah. If anything, it's a color box, like you're going to compress to control dynamics. But like, I think when you really use an 1176, you're doing it for the color that it adds, the distortion that it adds, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's what analog gear is really for. Is it's another color palette, Like if I want to control dynamics, I'll use a plugin. Like it's right. I mean, like John said, an SSL style compressor is great. A VCA compressor is great for drums or things like that. But if I really want to control a dynamic without changing the tonal characteristic, I'll use a plugin, because it's going to be way better at that. Because as soon as I slap a piece of gear on it, it's going to control it, then it's also going to change its character. And maybe I don't want it to do that, But yeah, I mean, I just have a old school blackface 1176, like a preset 01 gear. It's like that's what everyone should have in their studio.
I know, dude. I've had it for like a year now. The Audioscape 76D. Is that what you, John?
I don't, but I do have a bunch of Audioscape stuff.
Yeah,
people love it.
I think they're making incredible stuff. I bought, it's like a good side story, but I'm signed to Pulse, and when my studio was flooding in here, I got to work out of their studio for a little bit, and they have like a vintage Blackface 76. And every time I would go there and I would record a vocal, I would put it through that, and every single time I'd leave, I'd be like, this is the vocal sound I want. Every single time. I'm like, that mid-forward, whatever the 1176 does, is like, I didn't realize it until I realized, but like, this is the sound I'm always going after. And I was gonna pull the trigger. I was gonna pull the trigger and buy, you know, like a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 like vintage 76. And then I met up with my one buddy who's another podcast guest, Lindgren, and I went to work at his place and I saw he had the Audioscape and I was like, dude, what do you think? And he was like, dude, it's fucking great. My buddy who had 2 vintage ones just sold his 2 vintage ones and bought 2 of these because they sound like 98% as good. And this is actually a good transition to the next thing about analog gear. But he's like, he doesn't have to deal with any of the analog bullshit of owning a vintage piece of gear where it's like you have to get it fixed and then that costs money and then all this other bullshit. It's like Audioscape, they're really, really great. They'll just like, if something, I have an Opto, it was kind of being weird and they're like, hey, send it in, like we'll take care of it, don't worry about it. You know, they paid for all the shipping and everything. So, you know, and every vocal I do is recorded through that thing and it's like changed my life.
Yeah, I have
John,
I have their pull techs, and I very much, they're on every single mix I do.
Dude, those pull tags, my buddy DJ has it, and they're like fucking amazing. They're on my list to get.
They're on my 2 bus for everything I've done in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
As far as 1176 style compression, I have 2. One is the EL8 and then the EL8X. I know that seems like a weird sentence, but they are actually those are 1176s that they just modded with a distortion circuit. Yeah, but they're the exact same circuit, just with a distortion circuit.
That's a good 1176 story if I can fit it in.
Fit it in.
I assisted Jim Scott a couple of years ago, who's one of Rick Rubin's engineers, who did Bloodsick Sugar, or not Bloodsick Sugar, Californication, Tom Petty Wallflowers, a bunch of big records. Yeah. And he still mixes on a big Neve, and he has a couple of inserts, but he has one 1176, which is called the Moneymaker. And and he doesn't touch it. It's kind of that thing where he doesn't touch the settings. He just mixes into it until the needle stops moving. But I asked him about it, and he said he used to go through like the wanted or the for sale ads and the classifieds, and he saw some guy selling a drum set, and he went to go buy the drum set, and then he goes like, "Do you have any other music stuff?" He's like, "Yeah, I've got some gear." And this guy had like 5 1176s. And he was like, "Where, what's the deal with these?" And he's like, "Oh, these all came from like the record plant recording truck or something." And Jim used to work on the record plant recording truck, and he was pretty sure he bought one of the ones that he used to use, and that's like his like mono parallel compressor that he uses on everything. And it's wild. I've never heard an 1176 that sounds like that one. Like it's probably broken. That's my guess. And
right.
Like it's just like some things like there's a like a resistor that's out, and there's like a attack or like ratio multiplier that's going like haywire, and it just sounds like that, and he doesn't touch it, and it's really cool. But I've never.
That's that chaos you're talking about. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, to that point, like when I worked at Henson, we used to have an SSL has modular channels, right? Mono modular channels, and you could buy buckets on a G that had stereo channel buckets. But we had our techs mod one of the stereo channels to fit in a mono channel. So it basically, I think what it did was it converted the mic input to the left input and the line input to the right input. But they had to resist the mic input so that it would hold a line level signal. And in that process, it totally screwed the gain stage up. So that when you put in the compressor, it was this insane sounding compressor that was adding all this cool distortion and stuff. And that was like the drum sound. And you couldn't get that on any other SSL console because they were modded at Henson just for that. So it's like, it was broken, but in a really cool way,
Yeah. I mean, dude, that's what happens. You find like some stuff that it's just like, I mean, I said it on the last episode of the Roundtable, but like I've been like starting to collect like weird old microphones for like $100, $200 because like it just does a thing that like nothing else can do. And I've been recording vocals and acoustic guitar and just like, actually, is the setup still there? And you can barely see it. Oh no, there it is, right there. There's the RCA mic, and then there's my mic, and I recorded them both on a vocal at the same time. And I just like kind of like nudged that RCA one in, and it like just did something. I was like, oh, like there's the low mids, like in a really cool way, and just because it does a weird thing that could a plugin do? Sure, maybe. I don't know, probably not. But it's doing something that I like. I wanted to talk about workflow, both digital and analog. And Martin, you were talking about your summing there. What do you use, and what's kind of the process like for, you can be as specific or non-specific as you want.
Yeah. I have a Shadow Hills Equinox, which is a 32 in, 2 out amplified summing mixer. So it's got an amp circuit in it. I only mix with I think I only use 16 channels. I don't use all 32. But it's cool. It's got variable transformers that were designed by what's his name at Shadow Hills. I'm forgetting his name, but they're cool.
Dork.
Basically, one's like a Neve, one's an API, and one's like the Sunset Sound thing. I pretty much keep mine on the Neve. So mine is like pretty unique. It's not one of the ones that you can get off the racks today. It's an older one. Peter, that's his name, Peter. In fact, when I showed it to Peter, he was at the studio building something for us when I worked with Costi, and I showed him a picture of it, and he was like, "Oh, I think I put that together in my garage in Van Nuys, like before the company was like, in fact, the face plates are welded on, they're not screened on, and they're backwards. It says channel 2 on the left and channel 1 on the right, even though the one on the left is left. Like, it's all just kind of weird and wrong. And when I've worked on other like off the line Equinoxes, and it just sounds different. So I sum into that, and then that goes through a stereo compressor. I have a Allen Smart C1, which is what I'm using right now, which is a VCA compressor. Pretty clean, but it has a nice bottom end to it. And I also have a stereo voltage controller by Overstair, which is a little bit more modern. It's got high pass filtering and harmonics and things. So I'll kind of go between those two, but transformers. So you have transformers and then summing mixer, transformers in the compressor. And then I go back into a Burl converter. So another set of transformers. So it's all just like stacking. It's like a giant EQ curve that I'm used to.
Right.
And so basically I mix in the box and I subgroup out to the summing mixer in stereo groups like drums, percussion, bass, whatever, And then if I'm using a hardware insert, which I will sometimes for like vocals, I've got a Pultec and I've got a Magic Death Eye mono compressor. And then I've got, some other Overstair boxes, distortion boxes. I've got a Hughes SRS, which is a weird stereo image thing that's like meant for home theaters from like the 80s that I use as a send.
That thing fucking rules. It fucking rules.
It's a Chad Blake thing, but it looks like a VCR. Yeah. It's very weird. And then, and like guitar pedals, it's like I'll throw, I use guitar pedals on everything except guitars. So I'll use those as like vocal delays if I want. So I've got a really, really cool DOD delay that's just like super lo-fi and it has this like almost like pitch shifting effect that you can do. And like, again, it's kind of just another plugin, it's just another color.
Right. It's just
in the palette.
Here's a quick question about workflow that maybe some young, mixers or producers are wondering. What's kind of like, this is where the digital has like the quote unquote advantage for like recalls and stuff. Like, are you printing everything? You're like, that's what it is. Or how are you like keeping track of everything for like different stages of the mix?
Well, if I say I have like my vocal chain on my mono vocal chain, I use a recall software that's basically photorealistic and it saves it all locally. And so I have recall notes for everything. And usually after the first mix, I'll just burn in that insert. So it's there and I'll take notes on where it was. And I can tell you, I've never had to change it, no one's ever been like, that's too much or whatever, it's like, it's not doing something so much that like, I have to go back and fuck with it, it's certainly just making it sound good because it's going through some great tubes and circuits and stuff. So that's what I do. Like generally by the end of the first mix, the only thing that's live is my summing mixer and my bus compressor. And I don't even touch my bus compressor. I just mix into it.
Right.
It's just, I know where I want to hit it. And usually when I'm like, man, this mix isn't feeling right, I look down and I'm like, oh, I'm not hitting it hard enough or I'm hitting it too hard. And then I just readjust my gain staging. So I'm definitely a top-down mixer. Like I start with everything on and work into it. So I like recalls, when I used to do recalls for Costi, like I would phase mixes out on console. So I would like pull the mix up, recall it, print it, and then phase flip it against the original mix. And it would cancel almost identically, And if it didn't, then you could figure out what was wrong. It's like, oh, there's something weird with the bass compressor. It's on a different setting. So I don't have to do that here. But every once in a while I'm like, something sounds off. And then usually it's a plugin actually that like didn't get authorized or something. Yeah.
Right. Some bullshit.
Yeah. The gear is actually really sound. It rarely fucks up,
I mean, you don't have to reauthorize gear. It's weird.
No.
Yeah, it's very, very unlikely that I'm going to get a pop-up from any of my
shit.
It's like
refresh your subscription for your
as opposed to fucking auto-tune, which is like, oh, you didn't suck 3 dicks and send us $25 and do a cartwheel in a field on a Tuesday, so we didn't fucking drop your name into a spreadsheet.
My most annoying one, which is funny enough, I'm actually like starting to back off it, except for when I'm doing like pure pop stuff, is God Particle. and like that thing needs to be like reauthorized every month. And it's just like,
That thing is a bunch
bro,
of
what I like.
smoke and mirrors, man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the reason it's very good is because on like the producer side of things, it's like, okay, I have to get this like day one bounce done fast, and it's like people want their records, and if I didn't have that, like, I wouldn't be eating dinner with my kids. I'll be quite honest. So like, it's really good.
Tool, yeah, it's a tool to get to an end quickly.
Yeah. I don't hate on that plugin. I just hate on that guy.
Oh yeah, I think that's fair. he's another one of those characters.
Fuck that dude.
I know. God. Oh God. He's something. But
yeah. So in short, workflow's easy.
Yeah.
Shit gets burnt in. Recalls are easy. You know, like I said, most of the time if something doesn't come back, it's because like a subscription plugin didn't turn over in the month or something. Yeah.
I work off of a similar analog busing situation as well. Like when I first moved in here, I didn't, and then Martin's my next door neighbor, so I would hear Martin's mixes and be like, "What the fuck?" And he's like, "Are you analog summing?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" But he uses a powered summer. I use a passive summer, 16 channels, and everything goes out subgroups. But very similar, like top down, where it's just like I'm mixing into a very similar master bus processing that's coming off of the summing. As the summing is going into, but everything leading up to that, unless like there's an insert on a vocal or more than often a snare drum and a bass drum as well. Just because I don't know how to make snare drums and bass drums not sound like snare drums and bass drums without a distressor on them. Like they don't sound like. That's a me thing though. But like that again, like after mix one gets burned in and then everything else is, the recall is just, that's how my fucking center section's set up. Minus,
that's just what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Minus like tweaks on output sometimes, but also I do the same thing, like a complete photo. I have like a plugin that will store photos of all of the analog gear and just click it and plug it back in.
There.
Yeah.
God, I don't have the patience for that. Yanni, I wanted to get your take on what's kind of your mirror process to like kind of what they're doing, like summing, mixing. Like, do you have like food groups or like your mix bus? Like, kind of what's your approach?
Yeah. So being the digital guy, it's all baked in. It's burnt in from the get-go for me. But I do kind of operate on a similar workflow where like I do have the food groups, like all the drums, bass, keys, vocals, yada yada. And occasionally I'll like try and emulate this type of like summing, magic by adding like the same plugin on those food groups. Maybe like some kind of saturation thing like Saturn, or some stereo width, a little compression or something like that. So like I try and pull a little bit of that vibe into my digital domain.
Yeah. Would you like, I'm just like curious, just because we're talking about so much. Have you ever like considered getting like, like a big piece that just sits on your mix bus that like is analog? You're just like, nah, I'm good. I like my kind of like in the box workflow.
For sure. Oh no, I've definitely considered it. Definitely. Like, it's not cool being the digital guy. Like, that's not sexy.
I don't know, man. JJ Catalyst doesn't have Yanni. A fucking volume knob in his studio. That dude is cool as shit.
That's loco. That's wild.
Yeah. JJ comes to my studio just to be like, what the fuck are you even doing, bro? Like,
JJ just mixes at 0 dB all day.
No,
that's a legend. Scale. There you go.
Oh my God.
He's on ProAx now. He's off that PMC life.
He got rid of the PMCs? What?
Yeah, we all got rid of our PMCs.
Oh, snap. You have ATCs now.
I'm on ATCs and NS10s.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Because I'm 1,000 years old.
Whatever you got to do. I got my little PMC Result 6s, the cheaper PMCs, but they work just fine in my non-mixing room that has this really fun 60 to 80 hertz dip right where I'm sitting. It's super cool.
No, that's what you want, dude. That's how you get that good sound.
Dude, it's actually wild. It's like I've done it before with like, it's actually like a kind of fun, like almost magic trick where it's like I'll get like a tone generator, like, put it at 60, 70 hertz. And I'm like, if you walk back and you start walking forward and you're right here and it disappears.
Yeah.
And it's the most like wild, like it's how I teach phase to people, where it's if like, you know, I'm working with a songwriter, they're like, what's phase? I'm like, let me show you what phase is.
Wow.
Oh man, the way I
showed them-
teach phase to people is I screenshot their shitty sessions they sent me and post them on my Instagram.
I've seen it.
I don't tag the artist because I just want them to be embarrassed on their own.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh no, I fucked up.
Like people know, like generally because the way I schedule myself, I like the artists whose records I'm mixing that day know that I'm working on their record that day.
Right.
And
You
so
shame them.
yeah, it's great. It's good though. I mean, because it's so like a lot of the things that I mix are people who have recorded records themselves and who aren't engineers but are musicians. And like, you know, is your average like drummer who also owns like a PreSonus Fire 8 or whatever gonna like that he got from his older brother? Like, is he gonna know like what phase cancellation is? No. And for me, I mean,
they're just miking it up and hitting record. That's all it is. That's what I
Does
did.
it sound good? And that's the thing. It's like, it sounds good. Like, whatever, sure. It'll sound better if you just go like
that. Yeah. It's so funny. But you know what? Sometimes like things out of phase that just do a thing.
Dude, phase is a powerful tool, man. It's like it's a time-based device. It's an EQ. You can do so. John and I were just talking about this getting coffee the other day where it's like sometimes when you can't EQ something out, you just dupe the track, filter out everything you don't want, or filter everything except what you don't want, and like mix it back in out of phase, and it's stronger than just an EQ because it's literal math. You know, it's physics. Yeah,
that's like for this record that I'm currently mixing. They recorded it in a basement in Brooklyn, and like I'm pretty sure the ceiling was 8 feet. So like the cymbal flutter is crazy. It's just harsh cymbal flutter. And I was like, I don't know how to make this sound like it's sustaining because all of like what I'm getting is just like top end reflection, not sustain. I hit it with a compressor and I'm just getting like
more.
And then so like Martin and I went for a walk and he's like, well, why don't you just like duplicate the track, flip the phase, and just pull in what you want. And I was like, and it made
phase is cool, man. It's like, I mean, we all kind of came up listening to Chad Blake, but Chad Blake is like the phase master because he'll use it extremely creatively, especially with distortion. Like the stuff he would do with parallel distortion in and out of phase to like drop the octave of a drum or something like that. It's just like it's some magic, you know. It's really cool. But phase can be your friend, and phase can also really fuck you up.
Eric Valentine does shit like that too. Like Eric Valentine's like manipulation of phase, and also, you know, like fucking oh shit, he owned electric recording in Chicago. He just died. Fucking Steve Albini. Yeah, like Steve's like understanding of phase. Like the first time I ever worked with him, it was crazy. Just him to be like literally had a fucking chart like left over from his mix with the masters, and he's like, oh, you want to go through it real quick? And like pushes up his glasses on his nose, and we're talking about like how you can like make false harmonics below and beneath 60 cycles and like with phase shift. I'm like, sick. I'll never actually use this in any applicable way, but I'm glad that you can make a bass drum that sounds like shit in the room sound like a big fucking bass drum out of speakers.
God, that's crazy. It's like
he was nuts.
Dude
also used a bi-directional bass drum microphone almost always. Like, yeah. He was a pretty and he was awesome. Just don't read anything that he wrote in any magazine before like 1989. Dear God.
You know, no one's perfect.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but you know, yikes.
No, he was one of those. Without saying too much, I feel like he was just one of those guys where like he's like, I do this one thing and that's all I really care about, and like anything else is just like.
I think he was like a proto edgelord. Like I think if like had he been born later and like was introduced to 4chan, he'd probably be up there being like, check out this beheading video. Also, you know, if you flip the phase like 45 degrees on the snare top, you can get rid of most of the hi-hat and you can make up for the low end loss by using a shell microphone instead of, that's all one post.
Oh my God.
Also, why won't women sleep with me? Sorry, keeping it in 4chan land. Fuck them. They just got doxxed. Eat my dick. Fuck all those fucking fascist assholes. I don't give a shit. Come at me.
So, the question I wanted to ask you guys is maybe not for your own workflow, but for some of our either producer or mixer listeners here. What do you feel like a smart hybrid setup looks like in 2025 right now? Like for these young people, like what's maybe a couple pieces or things that you think someone should get? John, I'll start with you since you're on a hot streak.
Oh man, I love talking. I actually just like set up one of JJ Catalyst's clients with something similar to this. So it's cool you asked me this question. So I think as producers and engineers, you should have one really good vocal chain, and not like skimp out really on that. And there's ways to do it cheaper, but also like I will always, as a mixer, I can tell the difference between a vocal that was cut on like a shitty $700 like poorly designed electronic microphone versus something that is slightly more expensive or more expensive immediately just by its frequency response. So like understanding, like not everyone needs to have like a vintage 87 or a 67 or a 47 on hand all times, or if you're going that C800 route. But having a vocal chain that like is consistent, sounds awesome, and is versatile. So like what I just like set up JJ's friend with was I had an extra one of the like the twin of this U87 that I'm on. I sold her that. These are from the 70s. They're from Western Germany. They're sick. I had a twin of this one. She got a Great River 1073, which look terrible. They look awful. Whoever designed them, fuck that guy. But they sound fucking incredible. Like one of those, and I got her a Rev A of the Audiosonic, Audiosonic 1176. So like that
Audiosonic or Audioscape?
Audioscape. Sorry,
I was gonna be like, who's Audiosonic?
No, Audioscape.
You ever heard of Audiosonic?
And then for mixing, honestly, unless I think like staying in the box as long as possible is good, and really like and having time outside of that to develop your taste outside of like, because those purchases are always going to be really fucking expensive, and like and like and unless you really have an intention on what you're doing or really have like a handle on what you're doing with those things, like using, say, like, there are people who love the VT7. That's really expensive. And if you don't understand the intention behind using that on a mix bus or using it on a vocal, like you could be very well missing the point of that compressor, and you could be spending $12,000 to do so. The same thing with like with an Unfair Child or with an SSL. I think Alan Smart makes a really great affordable stereo bus compressor, a VCA style compressor, which will give you some of that SSL flavor, but also retain a bunch of low end. I also think like if you're getting really more into it, a little bit more advanced, and you want something specifically for your drums, I think like an API 2500, you could still pick them up used for about $2,200, which like on the mix and gear game isn't that expensive. But if you're going to go the route of expensive mix shit or analog gear for mix, there's a price point in there that is like prohibitive to a lot of people.
And yeah, it's high. It's really high.
But I also find like my mixing before I got an Unfair Child, just putting the Unfair Child on my mix bus and doing almost nothing with it, it was like opening a fucking window where all this air came in. And like, so a lot of the shapes of mixes that like a lot of us are emulating are things that are endemic to analog gear, just the way that they sound. And there's only so much digital like emulation is going to grab, what I'm saying? Especially when the higher the frequencies are, the more complex the math is. And, the chaos in that math too is really hard. Like top end comes from chaos and artifacting. Like everything even in plugin land, like everything other than higher than 16 to 18K is digital aliasing and plugin noise. Just some of it is just really pleasing, filling sound. I mean, that's what a fucking dither is. A dither is just throwing in a bunch of fucking noise, just very pleasant noise. Like when you're in analog gear, yes, there is noise, but also I do find that like a lot of that musicality will stretch farther within the sonic soundscape than within plugins. And that's kind of...
I'm not to cut you off. I'm really curious because you have an Unfairchild and they just released the plugin version pretty recently. I'm curious if you've messed with that and what are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I fucking use it. Now I have like 15 Unfairchilds. And I only bought one. No, it's great. The really big difference is, and the only like, and I've talked to Jesse about this, is like, I wish the plugin also emulated the accessory box, because having a hardware Unfairchild without an accessory box, you like 80% of the functionality you're not like using without the accessory box. There's like a feed forward.
What's the accessory? Yeah, what is that?
So the accessory box like is like an extension on it that you put your outputs and your side chains into. It has a filter for your side chains. So you can, instead of having, if you're going to use sidechain filtering, instead of having to use a separate EQ, you can set the sidechain EQ from a filter that's built onto the accessory box. You can also use it in traditional, your traditional 1170, your traditional Fairchild was a feedback style compressor. And if you're talking about VCA compressor and more modern compression, that's feed forward style. I could get into how those are different, but I feel like that's a very nerdy conversation.
That's even nerdy for a producer.
Yeah. But you can generally.
Well, let me get out the white sheet. And
So I mean, basically like feedback style is slower, groovier, more broadcast style compression. Feed forward is going to give you more aggressive VCA style compression, and there's like a blend knob between the two on the accessory box. So you can get some of the tubey squishiness, but if you want some of that top end aggression for, you know, snare drums, for guitars to really hit through, if you have big guitars or lots of vocals, I find that I'm really blending with that. Also, there's a mix knob, so you can use it in parallel, which you can't do on just the Unfairchild by itself. And there's an output knob, which doesn't exist on the Unfairchild. Yeah. So especially because like a big part of the sound of the Unfairchild isn't necessarily the compressing, it's the distortion. And like you can really smash into it for a lot of color, but then just completely obliterate your headroom. To be able to kind of tame some of that back. But yeah, that said, I just don't think it's a great, like, I just started mixing and I think I want a big ticket item, because there's just you're going to spend between the unit and the other thing, it's like 15 grand, and it's going to take you 2 years to learn all of it.
Yeah, no, it makes no sense. You know, Yanni, being the digital guy, like what do you tell some younger producers and mixers to like kind of grab first? I'm going to keep calling you the digital guy. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I love it. I'll own it. I would say, like, if you're a producer, then like kind of what John was saying on getting a nice mic, get the nicest mic you can possibly get. I would take like a nice, I would rather have a $5,000 mic going into a $50 preamp over a like $1,000 mic going into a $1,000 preamp.
Facts. Fucking
100%.
Hard facts.
It's really the microphone is like the thing. Spend cash on the mic. Get a sexy mic. And if you want to, like, I understand there's something nice about having a channel strip where it's like you got a little bit of compression right there, you got a little bit of EQ. That's a nice workflow. So for a producer, I would say maybe get a cool little channel strip type of thing. But prioritize the microphone.
Hey gang, I just wanted to pop in here to let you know that the best way you can help this podcast grow is to rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. It tells the algorithm to push our show to other listeners so we can grow. And it's one of, if not the best way to help support this podcast. So if you wouldn't mind, take a second to rate this podcast. Sharing it with your friends would be amazing too. All right, back to the pod.
And then if you're a mixer, I would say, don't get any analog gear. Just stay digital.
Yeah. Right. Just no.
Get
I
some
think
speakers,
that's
you know?
so true. Yeah. Yeah. Speakers.
I mean,
is the
yeah,
big one.
speakers,
That's what I was
speakers,
gonna
like,
say.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't a good mixer until I was in front of monitors that like I knew were right. Like I was okay and I made good sounding mixes, but I didn't make competitive sounding mixes or things that were particularly good or things that I would listen to again on Spotify and not be like, ugh, until I got like, I mean, the first nice speakers I had were PMCs.
Yeah. Big boy speakers.
They were
Martin,
the
what about you, man?
226s.
I mean, I pretty much the same. If you're an engineer or producer, you have some kind of nice input path, whatever, if you're cutting vocals, have a nice mic. If you're a guitar player, have a nice, whatever that is, something solid, like get a nice interface, that actually has a power. Don't use some shitty bus power thing that has no headroom, because power equals headroom, So if you have, most of the people all rag on those Focusrite interfaces, those bus powered ones, because they don't have any fucking headroom to input into. And if you're a mixer, honestly, I was going to say speakers. Like, I think that is probably, and they don't even have to be super expensive. I say find something that you like and you have fun working on and get you results. Like, and if that's NS10s, if that's ProAx or ATCs or whatever it is, find something that you like, because I think that's more important than anything else. And if it gear wise, like, I don't know, it doesn't matter, it really doesn't matter. It's like, if you're curious, if you're like analog gear curious, get like a big picture thing first. Get like a bus compressor that's just like, it's like easy to use and you don't have to think about it too much. And you're not worrying about like insert phase cancellation, because some interfaces don't compensate for that. It's like the mix goes in it comes back, you don't have to worry about your timings, things like, just start simple like that and see if you even like it, see if you can get a demo first. But yeah. I don't know. I think that I think in the end none of it really matters, except for like if you're working better, quicker, and having more fun, So like if you do that all in the box, like Yanni, like fucking do it that way. Like no one really cares. No one's gonna listen to the mix in the end and be like, oh, this would have been cooler if he used that thing. It's like, it doesn't matter.
100%. 100%. No one has ever been like, oh man, was this mixed analog, who isn't just a deep nerd. Like my setup is convoluted and annoying, but that's because I'm convoluted and annoying. It's like I relate to the way that this is set out, and I get to, like, my patch bay has a million cables. I get to feel like a fucking wizard. I have a giant beard. I'm in here almost shirtless all the time. There's no AC. It's fucking awesome. I get to feel like I'm creating something, but also like I like D&D.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Totally. Dude, it really just comes back to the process. Like,
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
we all can agree that like there's not an advantage to either one sonically. You can get where you need to go with either one. It's just like, which path do you want to take? Which one works for you? Both are good.
Just like D&D, which path do you want to take?
Exactly.
Precisely.
That's actually a really good parallel of like,
Yeah, right.
you've got, the vocal's too essy. What do? It's like
I roll my 20-sided dice and I hope that it comes up that I can use wave syllabants.
But to go back, actually, what you were talking about earlier about tactile stuff, which is I think is interesting, is that the difference, like, obviously you can turn knobs on like a controller that's mapped to a plugin or whatever, but I think there's something interesting, especially about synthesizers, about an analog circuit, because you have a different logarithmic scale of control on a real knob versus an emulated version of that. And I think there's something about performing, especially a synthesizer, in a certain way that's just more reactive. You know what I mean? Like your movements are less, or they're not quantized like they would be in a.
Well, they're not like you're not playing with latency. Like, I'm a player.
Yeah.
I'm a musician first. It's why I'm always going to be a producer. I'm never going to be a mixer, because that's just like not how my brain works. And I just got, I don't know if you guys can see it, I got my Sub 37 literally a week ago. So that guy's brand new. I'm still figuring out how the fuck to use it. But even though I don't know how to use it, I'm just like going through the patches and feeling it and playing it, I'm just like, oh, this feels so fucking good. And I've had all of like hey, there we go. I've had all of like the Moog, soft synth versions, like the Arturia one, the fucking the UAD one. They all sound great, but I just don't get those like same kind of like grooves and results that I get playing that. And it's like I'm realizing maybe I am a lot more sensitive to latency than I thought. I thought for years I'm like, nah, I can play through latency, and now I'm doing this, and I'm like, oh, all my parts are sick, and my pocket is fucking awesome. And I don't like, and I'm not having to like edit or quantize. And like, and it's what analog gear does, quote unquote, better too, is especially the synths here, is that like whatever's doing in the subs and the low synths, low mids, like soft synths just like cannot, for whatever reason, like recreate. I start playing that, the Moog, and I'm just like, just purely a sine wave sub, and you're just like, my whole fucking room is shaking. It's just, it's so powerful. I don't know. I'm having, as a producer, I have so much more fun, and I'm so much more creative and happy touching real synths.
Yeah, and I think that's the value right there, right? It's like,
yeah.
And if you can do that in the box, then that's great. But I think what you're looking for is exactly what you just said. Like what like brings more enjoyment to the process.
Yeah. Although I will say Serum 2 is fucking sick. It's really good. It's really been blowing me away. I don't know what's his face? Steve, is that his name? Steve, whatever. Duda, is that his name? Yeah,
Steve Aoki.
But that Steve Aoki, yes. God be with Steve Aoki. No, and then this is a new plugin that I'm going to share, because we were talking about siblings really quickly too. I don't know if you guys are on this new plugin called Splits. It's like a new kind of like de-esser, but it's not a de-esser. It's basically, it's able to, using an algorithm, like see in the waveform like what is an S or like a consonant, and it just like you can like bring it down by volume, and like you can like darken it or brighten it, and it's like the most transparent thing I've used so far. So everyone's, and it's like a $30-$40 plugin. It's really fucking awesome.
Wow, I've heard of that one actually. I want to get that. Yeah,
dude, you should. Yeah, I tried the demo, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, especially like on background vocals, you can just like put it on there and crank it, and it's like, if they sound a little lispy, it's like whatever, because it's, who cares? It's the background vocal. But it's like, oh, my headroom is back. I don't have to worry about all these like bullshit like
yeah,
stuff.
Incredible.
Especially like in fast music.
Yeah,
it is killer with between S's, like S's, hi-hats, crash cymbals, and fucking the top of the guitar all live in the same fucking frequency bandwidth. And like, you guys, I hate you all. None of you agree.
The worst. And what's funny, speaking of analog gear, is that like one of my favorite pieces of analog gear that not a lot of people have is I have an analog de-esser. It's an Orban 536A that I just found at a random auction, that I kind of just like, I don't know, that looks cool, and I got it for $80, and it fucking slaps. It's I go ahead.
Everything Orban makes fucking rips. Like their EQ is crazy. Yeah. Their compressor. I mean, fucking like Eric Valentine. Like he is all on that Orban EQ. Like that shit rips.
Yeah. But this is like this great thing I have. I just like, I don't really use it on a lead vocal, but on every background vocal, I just turn it on and I crank it. And it's like, I could use it on a lead vocal, but I'm just like, I'd rather just have the most control over that and like worry about it later. But like in background vocals, I can just crank it, and it's like really pleasing. It does like a thing that, I don't know, no one else really, really does. Want to go to my next question here. Also looking at the time, I kind of was talking a little bit about this earlier, but the one thing that's super annoying about analog gear is that they can break down sometimes. What's kind of I'll leave it to the gearheads. Either Martin or John can take this, but like, what do you do if like you're out a piece of gear for like a couple of weeks? Like, what do you and the annoyance of that?
I mean, I've been pretty lucky. I don't have anything vintage in my studio, and by vintage I mean like 70s, 60s. I mean, I guess my level lock is probably 70s, but it's solid state. I do have a very Mewtwo compressor, a Magic Death Eye, which is a custom piece basically. But you just call Ian, the guy that runs the company, he'll just come over and fix it. And like, the stressors are all circuit boards, so there's not really any components to mess with. 1176, you got to spray some gunk in there every once in a while, but I've been pretty lucky that none of my stuff's really. I had a Neve had a broken knob on a filter, but that was about it. Like I think if you have vintage stuff, then you're talking a different story. Right. I have a Pultec, but again, it's a reissue. It's not a vintage one, so it's like. But there's techs. They're still here, and if your Pultec goes down, and you just use a UAD plugin and get on with your life.
Yeah,
right.
Get it, I mean, also you kind of like learn to be the shepherd of your studio.
Yeah, that's part of running a studio is knowing like, okay, this thing's down. It goes to the shop, and you keep moving.
Or you learn to fix shit. I mean, that was like also like a lot of my like love of analog gear came because I couldn't afford expensive shit. So like, but I was the engineers that I loved growing up, like Kurt Blue and all these people who have these amazing analog setups, like I was like, well, how can I emulate that but not having that kind of budget yet? And it was like, oh, like Seventh Circle, send them $3,000 and you have 9 or 10 channels of audio that are sick. You just have to build it yourself. And like learning what signal flow outside of like the digital domain, but signal flow within a circuit looks like. So it's part of the reason why they call us engineers, right? Is we know how to read a schematic. Some of us do some. No shade if you do not. I understand that term has become like a different colloquialism at this point. But I mean, it used to be like at studios, you were an engineer not only because you knew how to press record, but like you also knew how to like realign tape heads and how to degauss things and things like that. And also like, when I first started in audio, that was a big part of like, if you were a runner or if you were an assistant, like you degaussed heads, you cleaned tape machines, you took faders off of large format consoles to clean all like the weed, coke, and coffee spill out of it. Like you were hands-on with the thing, and that's kind of carried over to my studio where it's like, once a year, me and another tech friend, this guy, Stefan Richter, will come, and anything that has a tube in it, him and I will sit here together and recalibrate it. Anything that may need a new switch, we'll order the switch for it, replace it ourselves. And if it's something that here I can't do, then we send it out. And like, it's like right now I have an H3000 that's down and almost no one fixes them anymore. So that's been a
whole... Dig a hole.
Fuck you. It's my entire vocal sound. My entire vocal sound. Nothing.
There's like one guy in the valley that knows how to fix that thing.
I know. God, I use the H3000, the plug-in one.
It's great.
Oh, why is my camera frozen? Is my camera frozen for you guys?
Sure is.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's my phone. Hold on, let's see.
Nate, fix it.
I know. What's happening? What if I just use my other camera? Hold on, FaceTime.
Just turn it off and turn it back on again. That usually works.
Go.
Shut the fuck up, Nate. You're back.
I'm back. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I think my phone like fucked up. I don't know what's going on. Whatever. I use my phone camera because it's nicer. Let's see if I can get it back. Let's see.
Oh man,
the old turn it off and turn it back on worked. We're back.
Yeah. Okay. How do you make analog gear work in your studio? I turn it off and turn it back on.
Pretty much. No, what I was gonna say is, it's funny. It's like analog gear goes down and blah blah blah. But you know what I have a lot more trouble with sometimes is plugins. Like I update my computer and to a new operating system that like not even like going from 13 to 14 or 15. It's like 13.5 to 13.6, and it's like I don't work anymore. Sorry.
Dude, that's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
It's a pain in the. I just spent 3. I'm not joking. 3 full days with a new computer installing software. I didn't do the migration like I normally do because it was a jump to a silicon chip. So I just want to do it from the ground up. 3 full work days here of just hitting my password and enter and my password and enter, and I was just like, like I don't even. There's some stuff I don't even remember I owned. I was like. I just started pulling up old sessions and it was like, oh, well, this doesn't work anymore. This didn't get 64-bit support. That's the other thing. It's just like, this EQ is never gonna not work.
Yeah.
Like as long as we have
Yeah.
electricity, it's gonna be fine. Whereas like there's this really great reverb I love that they don't support anymore, and now I have to like go into like Rosetta mode every time I want to use it. And
that's what I was saying.
annoying.
That's kind of what I was bringing up with this, where it's like there are some like setbacks where it's like, yes, analog gear is analog gear, but like, God, it'd be sick if everything I own was analog and all I was using was like, Pro Tools stock plugins, and then everything would just work. And I wouldn't have to like worry about like, oh God, this fucking plugin and what's this password and this iLock thing. And like, I recently just went through a thing where I spilled water on my laptop, and I'm fine now and didn't have to spend that much money because I have Apple Care. But like, when they gave me back my laptop, it was on the newest OS, which is OS 15, and I've been on OS 13 for a while because I'm like, my shit works, everything is great, I don't have to think. And because it came with 15, I was like, well, I'll try it out, like see what happens. And like, I couldn't even open Pro Tools, fucking. And then like dealing with their customer service. I hope someone from Pro Tools is listening to this. You guys fucking suck. You're the worst.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Every time Avid, like I get the pop-up when Pro Tools crashes and it's like, do you have comments? I always write, make better shit or make better products, you fucks, in giant letters.
Yeah, dude. What sucks is like Pro Tools, like at least on this laptop and OS 13 has been so stable for me. It's been amazing. And then like just like I was like trying to like figure out like OS 15 and like having them do it, and it was like they were taking like 2 days every day to get back to an email, and I'm like, can someone just get on the phone with me? I pay you guys $600 a year.
You gotta pay.
No, but if you have
phone call,
if you have the subscription, it's with it now.
Oh, it isn't. Oh,
yeah. The one-on-one care is an extra $21 a phone call with a subscription.
Yeah, it's fucking nuts. It's nuts. So it's just like, and it's like the thing. It's like I have Ultimate, and it's like I'm paying so much fucking money a year. Like you guys can go anyway. I've been very upset with Pro Tools. That's a
whole nother podcast.
I know, God, why Pro Tools sucks, and why am I still using it?
Yeah. Remember when you spent $30,000 on a Pro Tools rig? Well, you can get it now for $300 a year. It's just like,
yeah,
God. What a racket, man.
The absolute worst. I have a kind of, before we wrap in a couple minutes here, I've kind of a fun question for everyone here. Yanni, I'll start with you. I feel like I've always been going to you second. But what's a piece of gear, either digital, analog, plug-in? What's something that you feel like totally changed your workflow? Doesn't have to be expensive. Doesn't have to be, it's whatever you want that like really made a big difference for you.
I would say like multi-band compression. It's kind of something that recently I've kind of been leaning in on a little bit more. And ML4000, it's a plugin that is a multi-band compression plugin that I've been kind of leaning on a bit. And I'm actually like kind of coming on to the other side of this phase where I really used it a lot and I went heavy on it. And like now I'm kind of starting to go on the other side where I'm like, right. I overdid it and now I'm kind of not using it as much. But I urge everyone to go on their own multi-band compression journey because it's interesting. It's a powerful tool, and it can really do some crazy stuff. It can also like do some really bad stuff, but don't sleep on.
I feel like
band compression.
Yeah, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like multi-band compression is like the sound of modern pop music. I feel like that's how we're getting.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't like to use it on like singer-songwriter or like even rock stuff, or like when I want things to sound more natural, I tend not to touch those. But when I'm like the more pop mix I'm doing or the more pop record I'm doing, I'm like leaning more heavily on multi-band compressors because I'm like, I just want it to like be all frequencies at once.
Yeah, it really controls stuff. It's very keeps things right in their right place. Sometimes you want like things to explode and get out of control, in which case, it's not going to let you do that.
I know. I was using the ML4000 for a while, especially on pop stuff. And then I stopped using it because it was like doing too much. But like I got like the session from someone who said like, this is like supposedly like Serban's ML4000 mix bus setting. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll use it if Serban's using it.
irrelevant
it was just-
information.
Right. But like, you know, and like I used it. I was like, oh, like again, it's kind of like it was like God particle for me, where I was like, oh, like this just sounds good now, and like this can help me, you know, literally sell records to A&Rs who just like want things, especially in the talking purely pop world, especially for like pitch records. They want it to sound like completely fucking done because so many of them unfortunately don't have imaginations. They just like need to be like, okay, this is great. Let's just get so and so to cut it now. It's really good for tools like that. Anyway, that's my rant on continued rant on multi-band compression. Martin, what about you? What about you? What's like a piece of gear, plug-in, analog, digital, whatever that kind of really changed your workflow?
I think for my workflow, I mean, a bit of a cop out, but speakers. When I switched, I'm on ATC 20s, and it just changed. I mixed faster, better. You know, everything was easier. Changing my monitoring and that. But to get into like specifics, I've really lately been getting into actually getting under the hood of Saturn II, like getting in there and like using the enveloping and all the like modulation stuff you can do. I do come with a little bit of a synth background, so that kind of stuff like kind of like perks
Tickles.
up, hits me in the right brain spots. So like getting in there and being able to like especially with drums, you can do a lot of like tone shaping to make something that was recorded in a boring space with a boring drum kit sound really unique and cool. And that's just fun to get under the hood because it feels more like modular, or it is modular, but analog. Like you're actually like connecting little wires and like getting it to do things that you want to, versus like something like the God particle where you're like, I don't know what this is doing. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm just turning this knob. And I tend to just really dislike those because I like to know what's happening.
Right.
And Saturn's fun because you can just go through a preset and be like, oh, that's cool. And then you can literally just like lift up the hood and go like, what's happening here? You know, you can kind of figure out why things are doing certain things. But that one's definitely a lot of fun. I don't know if it's like changed my workflow, but it's definitely made me more creative.
I love that you know what you said, where it's like you can go through presets and like, because I love flipping through presets when I'm just kind of like, I don't know, like let's just see what this can do. And it's like I like it so much more when it's like exactly what you're saying, where it's like, oh, like this is what you're doing, and it's like, okay, I just want like a little bit less of that. And it's like exactly in God particle, it's like you can't really be like, I want a little bit less of that. It's just like boom or boom, and that's
well, I think the best way to learn something is to reverse engineer it. Like if you go, oh, that sounds cool, why? And you're like, oh shit, that's compressing like 24 dB with a very fast attack and a very fast release. That's why it's sounding like all spitty and weird. And like maybe you would have never tried that because you wouldn't have like ventured into that world. But I mean, and as far as analog goes, I don't know. I got this like real level lock last year, and last year, and it's just fun. Like you just put any, like if you want distortion on anything, you put it through it. It sounds great. It pumps things in a way that like I don't think anything else does. It's so unique. It's noisy as fuck, but it's part of it. If you're using that, you're not looking for a clean sound, so it doesn't matter anymore. but yeah.
So funny. John, what about you? What's something that's really changed your workflow?
I got a few. That's okay.
Go for it.
As a plugin land, everything that Make Believe is made. Ryan has made some of the wildest shit. Like the MBEQ is fucking incredible. It's like a way more musical version of like a Fab Filter, like Q3 or Q4. That's crazy. Also, all of like the mainly right now for EQ in the box, I just use the Metric Halo EQ channel strip. It's pretty much it. Just sounds really beautiful, and it looks like it was developed in like 1996, so there's nothing like flashy about it.
It's the great river of plugins.
Truly. And then analog stuff. There's a company called Garbage Ideas out of Atlanta. Jason Kingsland, he's like a mixer who builds these like total smash to pieces boxes for 500 series that are super cheap and fucking awesome. I like them so much that I blew up our dumb like Mix Boys thread in LA, and I was just like spammed like Yanni and Martin with it.
I saw you posting about it on Instagram, and I checked it out. I was like, that does look interesting. Like,
it's fucking sick. Also, they're super funny. Like when the compressor lights up, it just says you did it. Like it's like that kind of shit. And Jason, who owns the company, is a fucking like he's a genius. He's made incredible records, but he also has a really great perspective on the audio industry. And like that shit just for like distortion, like in a different way, not only just drum distortion, which is like kind of what it's known for, but for like bass guitar parallel distortion and also guitar parallel distortion. A lot of my mixing is done. It's like everything has at least 2 or 3 parallels every element. So, and a lot of that is for things like distortion, not so much compression.
Right.
Yeah, so like that's a piece of hardware. And then honestly, like the that changed my hardware, that changed my workflow for forever was API 2500.
There you go.
It's like
Mostly on drums or just that kind of everything?
My hardware one lives on my drum bus. But like Lin Ying's record, so she's like a dream pop artist from Singapore. I just mixed her whole record, and that was on the master bus for most of it, in junction with the Fairchild.
Sick.
But like it's so musical and so tactile, and like the way that it feels percussive music, like it feels like it has like an internal heartbeat that it wants to lock in, and when it does, it's just like things that are already knocking really hard, they come out sounding knocking even harder and feeling correct and like pocketed right. I find a lot of times, like especially like the slower compressor sometimes will like kind of fuck my swing up a little bit. Especially on like pop music, it'll just feel too regulated.
Right.
This shit doesn't do that. It's beautiful. API really fucking crushed it. And the new one sounds good too. I don't have a new one, but I used the new one at Gold Diggers a few weeks ago. Sounded awesome. Oh, also Audio Punk 610 Spectra 610. That thing is crazy too.
Dude, yeah, it's funny enough. Again, you like I literally just bought because I was using the demos for a while. I literally just bought all the Audio Punks.
So this stuff is fucking cool.
Yeah, I did a video
really
for them like last year, and like they gave me all their shit and everything that they gave me. I was like, this sick. Like the Echo Mixer is fucking crazy.
Yeah. And then I love the spring reverb like that. It's just really, Yanni, you're probably going to be getting mixes with it from me, so just buy it.
I'm excited. Yeah, I love it. It sounds cool.
Oh, yo, Yanni.
It's really, yeah.
Yanni, let me get at you after this podcast. We'll get you set up. Like,
oh, say less, dude. Incredible.
Sick. Yeah, dude. Yeah, they're really, really good. I literally just today I bought it because I was using the demos and I was like, oh, I should just get it. And fucking, I wanted to use the spring reverb. Really good, really good. Okay, and then our last little segment here is, well, not last segment, second to last segment, is we have a couple. We have a listener question, and Nate, you don't have to hop on yet, but if you have a question for our guests here, like let me know if you want to ask it. But we got one question that I thought was a good question to ask from our listener questions. Curious you guys' take on this, and I'll answer it too. And anyone can just hop in if you have a 2 cents on it. I don't know if this is going to be one where I'm going to get everyone's opinion. Is 8-track and that's so funny. This is from our other intern. This is it's from Elijah. I didn't even realize it. Is 8-track tape recording making a comeback?
yes. Trash Pile's entire record we did on a 388. And I have a 38 8-track right there.
Sick.
I would say in certain circles, yes, but not across the board. I mean, it's a color.
I think it's like in relative terms, it's coming back from like 10, 15 years ago, where it's like we all just like really we dove in deep into like digital world and tape. Tape is expensive, and 10, 15 years ago when it was more like studios and labels having to like keep buying it, they didn't want to keep doing it. But now that it's become more niche, I think there's more mixers and even producers who are like going back to tape in a really cool way and leaning into it and being like, right there, exactly. As John points, for people who use audio only here. It's something I'd be interested in. I love the sound of tape. Like one of my favorite records was that Foo Fighter record from like 10 years ago that was recorded all on tape. I thought that album sounded incredible.
You know what was mostly recorded on tape? Kintsugi.
Oh, there you go. And I
Yeah.
love that fucking album. So there you go. More, I guess my tape. Maybe I should buy some tape.
Well, I mean, I think there's a difference between a Studer 24 track in a well-maintained studio than someone with a random piece of half-inch tape that's on an uncalibrated machine. I think what you're talking about is more of the I'm going to do a lo-fi Krungbin style whatever. You know, to me, it's like a stomp pedal almost. You know, it's like a color.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that.
It's more. It is more. Yeah, I think it is more like people wanting to put it down on tape, like not to make it sound like on tape, but for whatever tape does that we like, not like.
I get that, but I feel like the most stuff that I've heard. I mean, I haven't heard the record John has done, but the people that I know that have tape machines are using them as like compression and distortion boxes, and not like we're going to calibrate this and make sure it's biased correctly and blah 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 blah. You know, which is a different thing.
That's a lot of work. That's too much.
And tape too much work doesn't sound good these days. Like new tape is highly inconsistent. So it's tough to get stuff that even sounds good. Don't wave your head, John. John is waving his head.
He's like, I bought this thing. Don't stop talking shit.
Well, I mean, I think out of except for maybe Martin, out of all of us, I probably have the most experience recording to tape. And I guess tape can be inconsistent because tape was inconsistent 15 years ago. Like tape was inconsistent 20 years ago. Like you're still working with the same formulas. But I think there is more, at least from the clients that I've worked with, and like for where I'm at in the industry, which is generally less pop, more indie, and more rock. There is a hunger to at least experiment and understand what recording to tape does, because it is a thing. Like, you record drums to tape, you listen back, and they sound fucking done. Like, it's sick.
Yeah.
Like you cut a vocal to tape or cut a bass to tape, and you're like, cool. I don't have anything to do. I can just stripe it out through my mix bus, and it's done. I don't need to there's a compression thing that happens. There's a 60 hertz roll off that is like beautiful. Also, the amount of top end musical top end that gets captured by tape is significantly higher than in digital. Like, and it doesn't get harsh. It stays musical. Like S's sound different on tape. Like cymbals, like that's like when people think like, oh, why is drums on tape so good or so specific? Like, why do you want to do drums on tape or bass? It's because it's not only because you get that like 60 hertz roll off, so you get this like consistent formation of formant within the drums themselves. And tape can be punchy depending upon how you hit it, and tape can distort depending on how you hit it. But also there's this extended top end that digitally just gets hacked to becoming incredibly harsh, and you have to use things like soothe or de-essers or things like that to wrangle it. While when you print it to tape, a lot of that shit either just extends itself through its full harmonic range. So the things that are harsh move up the harmonic series and move up to a part of the tape that you're never going to hear it, and then eventually get phase canceled out. Or they just, because of the inherent compression of tape, get compressed in a way that's incredibly musical, especially on like a 2-inch machine that's running at 30 inches per second. Especially if you're running like a 16-track machine. An 8-track machine that's half-inch, you still run the risk of getting some harshness, but nothing compared to like recording 8 tracks into Logic on the Scarlett. Yeah.
I mean, I think too, it's just like we as humans, for whatever reason, like happen to like the sound of tape. Like I don't know many mixers that don't put a tape emulator of some kind on their mix bus at this point, or somewhere in the chain. It's just become part of the sound that we like.
Yanni's over here smiling because he's like, I've never used a tape machine in my life.
Yanni uses. Yanni does use. You use the isotope one, don't you?
Oh yeah, I'll use that. I went through a phase on that one a little bit. Yeah. But
do you use
not
Jesse's?
That much, man.
Jesse's like Sony tape emulator thing?
No, I don't know what that is.
The Music Land one.
The Chris Lord algae box.
Yeah, Jesse Ray made for Mixland makes like this like
it's like 3348.
It is fucking awesome sounding. Like no shit, it is on my mix bus for the latest things that I'm doing because I think it sounds fucking perfect for what
What's
it
it
is.
called? I got a
Wow.
mix. It's by Mixland.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an emulation of a Sony
Uh,
3348, which is like one of the early digital tape machines.
See
And it
it.
was like the Chris
Oh.
Lord-Alge thing. Like he
Oh,
would have all his
Oh, all right.
assistants. Like if you had a 100
Oh, and
track
it's
record, he would like bust that down to that 3348 and mix off of it. So all your guitars would get smashed to like 2 tracks. And if you wanted to change the balance
$38.
later,
It's $38. That means I already bought it. This is what happens. This is
give
if a
give
plugin's
Jesse your
below
money.
40. Yeah, right. If a plugin is below $40, I'm like, well, it's not $100. All right, Nate, what's your question, buddy?
I just have one question. Just when coming back to the idea of staying musical and tactile, especially because you guys have got a lot more mixing experience than I do, just the idea of approaching automation with writing physical faders as opposed to like automating in the box. Do you guys implement that process? Because I find that automating physically with faders just makes the whole thing more musical and it just makes the whole thing feel a lot more
Yeah.
like I'm orchestrating the track as opposed to going through and putting dots on the fader line, putting it up and down, trying to get the feeling that I'm hearing digitally. And I just wanted to know whether that's something you guys implement because I feel like automation. I followed Jeff Ellis a lot recently, and it's something that he really implements into his process. And so I just wanted to hear your guys' take on physical faders, automating it against automating in the box, and where you sit.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of a physical fader. Like that, the concept of that makes a lot of sense to me. I've never gotten it to work though. I've had a few different styles, like just the one fader, the 8 faders. It never works for me, man. So I just doubled down on figuring out how to do it with the mouse. Like it's very quick and easy, and I feel like I can still like get musicality out of just like
Yeah.
using my mouse wheel, you know? And
Yeah.
it's so
Hold on,
much.
John. You're not going to be on camera, but it's so funny. John is holding up his like mixing, like fader thing over here for our
Yeah,
listeners.
faders. I mean, it makes sense to have the fader, but
I don't know.
I don't think I've just figured out a workaround. You know, it's easier, I think, in my opinion, to just highlight a section, highlight the chorus, boom, go up a dB, or I can clearly see we're ramping into a verse. Let me just do a little angle thing and sweep it up. I don't need to like ride the fader. You know,
Yeah.
I can kind of just
It's-
make the move.
it's-
You know.
It's so funny. I'm actually in between Yanni where I feel like John and Martin are going to be, where it's like I do like to use a actual fader when I can. I used to work at a studio. Our mutual friend here, DJ Daylight, he does. He had like the 1 bar, like the PreSonus one.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
have.
That I like to use a lot. But I actually got really good at using my mouse and like either using it on like the Pro Tools fader and automating it in, or like I have my Pro Tools session set up where it's like everything is ready to go to be automated if I want it to. And I would like move it with the mouse and like I just gotten really good at it with a mouse. And so now just because I'm like used to that, I'm just like, okay, like, it's like people who are good at like the Rolly mouse versus like, one of these mice. I used to play video games a lot like this. So I'm really accurate with it. Yeah, see, there's the Rolly mouse. I love how John keeps holding up his things like a little puppy, being like, look at what I have. What about you guys, Martin, John, whoever wants to go?
I'm like I do the 90% of my moves with the trackball because it's easy to get fader balances and stuff. But I do have a fader. I'll do a lead vocal pass with the fader, and it's usually just like little moves I'm doing. It's tough with my system because I am monitoring post conversion. There is a bit of latency, so I kind of have to like. In a weird way, I've gotten used to it. But I like to have a little bit of that touch, especially like vocals, guitars. If you're trying to like push elements, like when a vocal's not singing, I feel like it's just a bit. Sometimes when you do things and you're reacting to only hearing, and I know that I think Jeff talks about this a lot in his like mixer brain series things about like you just react differently. Especially, I do a lot of like delay feedback automation or like time changing automation to get effects and stuff, and like to draw it in and then like listen to it and go, okay, I need to add more or whatever is such a weird process versus just like enabling the automation on the knob and doing it as the song goes. Because you get to a point where you're like, oh, I'm on the edge of like about to be too much, you know? And
Right.
then you actually respond to that and you kind of hold back or you go, fuck it, I'm going to go more or whatever. The same way you would with like a hardware box, whatever. I mean, I do that all the time where I'm like, I'll just run something on an insert and I'll just do multiple passes and print it every single time of an effect. And I'll go, oh, that one's cool. And maybe cut it together with another one. But there's like no way I would have come up with that sound by just drawing it in automatically. But like Yanni says, it's so easy just to get your balances and your stuff going. It's like, yeah, oh, this whole chorus needs to be louder. It's like, obviously, it's like an offline trim on a console. You just do it like that. You wouldn't even run the automation. But I do like having some kind of touch somewhere, especially when it's needed to react. But if you're doing utilitarian stuff, then, you know, there's no point in sitting there like holding a fader up a dB while you run the chorus, you know. That's just, you wouldn't do that on a console anyway. You just go from here to here, trim, execute, and it would do it automatically, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I do a fair amount of automation with the trackball for sure. But that's kind of like global automation stuff. So like, oh, the chorus is here, so all the drums get louder. So drum channel, like, you know, drum aux goes up. The guitars for this verse are palm muted, so they need to be louder. Although now, instead of even automating it, I just duplicate the channel and make it louder. Like, no, not like I cut it and then drag it. Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's not that crazy. But like, so, and like about 90% of the stuff I mix in here that doesn't have a console. But I do mix at the Village quite a bit. And there I'm mixing on an 88 RS that has fully flying faders and full automation on it. And like that, I do feel like I'm much more performative in my fader movements, and I feel like that adds to the mix in a different way. But also, things that I'm mixing here versus things that I'm mixing at the Village are, again, going back to what I said earlier, like they serve different intent. You know, like if something has the budget to go to the Village, it's probably something that can be a bit more sweeping and moving and a bit more organic, while something that like has the budget to only stay here is generally going to be something a bit more DIY, where like it wouldn't make sense for me to do these big sweeping automation moves or these subtlety things that are going to get lost because the drums are and the fucking singer is So, you know, that being said, maybe the next hardcore record I mix, I'll do it at the Village just to scare Jeff.
Yeah, and you know, I think too, it's like for me, like being more the producer, it's like I feel like when I'm trying to automate something and have it feel more musical, that's when I'm drawing it in. And when it's more like utilitarian, like that's when I'm like, okay, like kind of what Yanni was saying. It's like this whole section I'm just bringing up. Like I do a lot of like, I mean, Yanni's seen my productions. Like I do a lot of both. Big thing that I automate, you know, is like the main vocal verb. I'll like kind of have the song go through and like I'll bring the fader up and down, just like seeing what I want it to do. Same with like a delay, or like I do a lot of the same thing with like delay feedback. I'll have it go, you know, just I'm kind of just like experimenting and seeing how it feels. And like what Martin said, you're able to like feel it when it's too much. You're like, oh shit, okay, bring it back. And then I can go in there and like if I did too much, I can kind of like just cut that part out when I want too much and fix it, which is nice. But all right, we're gonna go onto our actual last segment here, which is called In the Bounce Folder. And we started it last week. We'll see if we keep going with it. Thank you, Nate, for your question. Appreciate it. Everyone, our intern, Nate, he's been amazing. Nathan Rebello, check him out on all socials.
I waited the whole time just to get that one question through.
Just for that. No, we love Nate.
Fuck you, Nate.
This is called
I'm coming for you, John.
In the Bounce Folder, and this is anything you guys want to plug, whether it's a record you just worked on that's coming out that you can talk about, new piece of gear that you got that you're super stoked on, just something, you know, that you want to talk about here for a minute. Martin, why don't you go first?
Okay. I finished mixing it last year, but it just got mastered, and I'm kind of like helping, executive produce, creative produce this record with a friend of mine named Will Fox. And it's probably not going to come out till later this year. He just put out another record, but it was one of the records that I like heard his demos and I was just like, I want to be a part of this. And I just I felt like I naturally knew what to do with it. And we all, between him and the producers, just three of us. And it's just like one of those things where like I don't know, it just felt natural and real and easy. And I got to be creative and expressive. And it's been one of my favorite things. The album's called Second Wind. I guess it's coming out later this year. But it's just like one of those things where I'm super proud of it. And I feel like it just ticked a lot of boxes for me. And I was able to be an engineer and an artist at the same time, which is a lot of fun.
Love it. Yanni?
I'll plug this artist Pink Skies that I just mixed a song for, and it's just good tunes, kind of like a little bit of a psychedelic thing, a little bit of a country thing, a little bit of a rock thing, and everyone should go listen to Pink Skies.
He's great. John?
Lin Ying on Network, her new record Swim Swim just came out. I mixed and produced that with Jordan Blackman. Martin heard me mix it for 18 months through the wall.
Sounded great.
It's true. That record is like a dream pop. It's like kind of the first thing I've ever really made outside of like the idiom of punk. And it's kind of opened my eyes to a part of the industry that like I'm like, oh, this is really like actually really beautiful and really fun. Also I just finished Pulley's new record. NOFX has a new record that's coming out this year that I've been working on slowly. Everyone go check out Garbage Ideas for sick, cool FK smash compressor. And also, if you're not an Oak Sound user, you should definitely go fuck with Spiff immediately. And those
Spiff
are
really good. Yeah.
I say that as the US product rep of Oak Sound.
There you go.
I feel like I needed to get that in there or else they'd get mad.
Wait, what US product rep for who?
OX Sound.
Oh, I had no idea. Huh, there you go.
Yeah, Doc. I was there. You could have seen me at the NAMM booth, baby. Just talking shit.
There you go. We might have to talk later. I mean, I already have everything they own or they made, but still. It's one of them and Make Believe too are also just like some of the most incredible plugin designers. Baby Audio as well. Baby Audio makes really cool stuff. Love Baby Audio.
Parallel X is pretty incredible, and yeah. But as far as things that I'm working on, lots of punk stuff and lots of dream pop stuff. So.
You know what I get about all these all these plugin companies, especially these smaller ones. You're supporting small businesses, and mostly in America. Sure. So you get around the tariffs,
and mostly fucking engineers.
Mostly engineers. Yeah. Yep, just
like
hardworking bros and gals.
Yeah, like OX Sound is a bunch. OX Sound is like 3 mixers, a producer, and a mastering engineer. And Make Believe is a studio that they just started making plugins out of their own shit. And Garbage Ideas is just a mixer in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think it's sick. Like all these, like it used to just be like waves. I feel like for so long, and now it's like so many like ratchety small companies. My In the Bounce folder. Something that Yanni also actually worked on, funny enough. Rosie Darling's new EP, Roomful of People, literally just came out an hour ago.
Fuck yeah!
Wow, it came out an hour ago. So very, very excited for that. That was really fun. I mean, I've been working with Rosie for a while, but this project was really fun. It was 5 of the 6 songs, if I'm remembering correctly. Right? 4 of the 6 songs. 4 of the 6 songs were written at this like writing camp that we did at a beach house. It was I brought over most of my stuff and my my guitars and stuff, and we wrote a lot of that record there and then produced it out over the next couple of months. It was just a really fun process for me, and I got back to doing a lot of real drums, and then Yanni came in the end to save my mixes from myself. Yeah, so that came out today, which is very, very special. Well, guys, we're gonna wrap the episode here. I want to thank you guys so much for spending your time here when you can, I'm sure, be doing much better things, but we really appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners appreciate it so much. And speaking of our listener, thank you, listener, for listening to the podcast. How many times can I say listen in this one sentence? Thank you so much, guys. Have a good night and take care. Thanks for tuning in to Producer Points. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and share with fellow music enthusiasts. For an encore, check out our Spotify playlist featuring all the songs we've discussed on the show, giving you the perfect soundtrack to your creative journey. Additional audio and video editing for this episode was done by Nathan Rebello. Until next time, this is Justin Gammella.